for the Public Works Department budget hearing. Mr. Mark Sternovit and everyone, if you'll introduce who you got with you.
All right, thank you, Chair. Thank you to the council people that have stayed for us. We appreciate it. I want to introduce the people we have here tonight. We've got, of course, Sharon Wallstrom, who's in our admin and finance department. We also have Sharon Smith here, who's in beautification on my left. We've got Don Reed, who is in our paving and capital construction. Courtney Stone, who is our community outreach manager. And then we've got some other folks in the back that we can call on if we need them. We didn't know what we were going to ask, so we basically brought everybody. So let me start off by saying that we know that the budget request that we made to the mayor was aggressive. I think every now and then it's important to take stock in your department. We spent a lot of time looking at each area within Public Works to identify needs, and we included those in our request. But we wanted our request to be viewed more as a roadmap or a plan for upcoming years and what's to come. We appreciate what's included in the mayor's budget for Public Works, and we feel we can continue our current operations under the proposed budget, and I want to make that clear. There's a few things that I'd like to say. I know it's late, now I'll be brief, but there's two things I want to talk about. First is sidewalks. And over time, since I've been at Public Works, we've heard your comments that it takes too long for us to build sidewalks, and I tend to agree with that. I have a development and construction background. I think we can do better. We recently changed some of the things that I think will help speed things up in our projects. We now have Don Reed in charge of all our capital construction, which includes sidewalks. You all know Don and how organized and efficient he is. The way he runs our paving program, and so we think he can help improve that process. We've also looked at ways to speed up and streamline how our contractors work on projects, and we think that will help too. Having said that, I also want to say that part of the reason sidewalks are perceived as being slow is that we are committed to building better quality projects. Where before we might have made compromises on how we design and construct sidewalks, we now strive to make sure that our projects meet the complete street standards that we all want, so the process takes longer now. But I want you to know that we will make a concerted effort to speed up the process, but we won't compromise on safety or quality. In addition, we now have an updated walk and bike plan in place, and so the process for how we plan and select projects in the next few years should follow a more logical and predictable path. We currently are working on 71 new construction sidewalk projects. Most recently, we've been focused primarily on sidewalk repairs. I know that's not very exciting. But the new projects are just starting now to come online. We have 4 projects, sidewalk projects under construction. We have 5 more that will start within the next 4 weeks or so. And then we have 24 more projects that will start by the end of the year. So the projects are starting to roll out. The other thing that I wanted to comment on tonight was our responsiveness and communication. We've made an effort to improve that at Public Works. This is both to you, the City Council, and the general public as well. We have a lot of interaction with you, so communication is key. We have a new PIO, Kelly Brockman. We have a new community outreach manager, Courtney Stone. I hope you have noticed that we are more responsive to your calls, that we attend every council meeting and are available to help and answer questions, and that we're in more meetings in your district. We send out a weekly update every Friday to the council that we hope to expand and build upon. And we'd like to know from you how we can make that more useful. Last week, we introduced the Public Works Committee, the Capital Funds Management System Tracker. We're looking for a new name, by the way, which will allow the council and the public to see and monitor all the projects that we're working on at Public Works, and we'll make this public in July, and it'll help you communicate and inform your constituents about projects. I think the council people that were here last week that saw it were impressed by the project and the presentation. We've also made a lot of improvements in how we collaborate with other metro departments. This includes the obvious ones like planning and MTA, but it also includes water, and parks, the police department, TDOT, and NES. So those are the two items that I wanted to talk briefly about. I know we want to get to your questions, so I'll turn it back over to Chairman.
Start with questions. Councilman Pridemore.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director, and for you and your staff being here. Certainly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to the celebration luncheon on Thursday. So that would be a good.
We are too.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. I just have a question concerning, since my district and Council Lady Van Reese's district was one of the two that, or one of several that portions of the district went from GSD to USD. Naturally, there's been a lot of questions, and I appreciate all the meetings that were held prior to the annexation. But, I don't know if there is such a list, or in looking at your the impact and the recommendations, you did get some increases for anticipating the increase into the urban services district. So I know that sidewalks, we've met with some in Public Works pertaining to the sidewalks, and it was mentioned about the fact that we're going to have certain areas that we put on as council members put a priority on. And one of my priorities was trying to enhance a particular area to allow my constituents to actually see the benefits and reap some of the benefits of being in the urban services district. So I say all that. Is there any, do you have a long-range plan that somewhere, and I'm not saying tonight or next week, that will be public or presented to the public where they'll see what the changes are going to be? And I know it's not immediate. I know the trash pickup is not going to be one day it's the private contractors, and then 6 weeks later it's whoever wins the contract with Metro. But just something somewhere down the line where they will be able to see what the benefits are or the changes in services in the timeline, basically, is what I'm saying, for the annexation.
Right now, we have received some funding, but it's going to be more towards the end of the year. The constituents have gotten their appraisal amount, and the taxes on that new appraisal for the USD will not be in effect. They won't have to pay until October through February of next year. So we need to get in some of that revenue to be able to start buying the equipment and start putting things in place to provide those services. So in the meantime, we were given some money towards the end of this budget year that we're looking at right now to go ahead and start hiring and trying to put some of the lights together and everything. So we're going to put the contracts out for the trash to see what kind of responses we get. We'll take a look and see what we need to do internally as far as recycling goes. And we're going to start working on a plan to put together the lighting for that area. But it's not going to be immediate. It'll be more towards the second quarter of 18.
And that's what we, especially when all the reappraisal notices came out, that we tried to reiterate the fact that, or emphasize the fact that that those tax rates wouldn't be until 18. And also that the services, I think when we discussed it with the community, that it would be staggered throughout 2018 and 19. So,
right. And I've spoken with Councilmember Van Rees, and whenever we have something more official, we know exactly who's going to be providing the services, we know when they're scheduled to start, and we have something more definitive that we will come out and meet with the community groups and provide more information.
Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Chair. Well, Director, you want to take a stab at what my first question is going to be?
I'll go ahead and let you.
Central Pike. I've waited and I've waited and I've waited patiently, I believe. And I asked the question again today, and here's the answer I got. Well, it's NES that's not doing it. I'm sick of fingers being pointed. I need to know, when are we actually going to do something and what's going to happen? That's question number one. Question number two, you guys sent out to me, there's been no sidewalks in my district done whatsoever since I've been in office. Where you guys are talking about wanting to do it doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and I've sent an email back saying I don't think it makes sense. I think Central Pike is in much greater need for it. Of course, I haven't raised too much cane about that because we haven't done the widening of the road that we're supposed to have been doing. And so I'm trying to figure out, how do we get things moving? Because it's 2 years now, 2 years.
Okay, well, I think you've been contacted by Colliers, and we're going to add extra resources to that project, the first one that you asked about. We have sidewalks in the plan, and what I would suggest, Councilman, is that you come to the office and let's talk about all of those things one by one.
Okay.
And we'll give you
That would be
answers.
great,
And
because
we can talk as long as you want to until you get the answers that you want.
okay, I think that would be wonderful, because I don't think we need to waste money, but if we're going to spend money, let's do it efficiently. And
Yeah, and without getting into the details, I don't think we want to do that here tonight. But you understand that that project is complicated, and that the sequencing of it between the private developers, NES, and others is complicated. And so,
there's no doubt it's complicated. Just 2 years just seems like an extreme amount of time, and I'm pretty sure that if we sat down and looked at it, because again, I was told this afternoon it's NES's problem right now. So I will call NES in the morning and I will have a conversation with them.
we'll make ourselves available to you, and I promise to you that we'll take as much time as it needs to get you the answers that you want.
I would just like to have, I would like to see the people in my district actually see some progress being made, and as opposed to sticks in the grass.
That's not unreasonable.
Thank you.
Councilman Schulman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Director. Just a couple of things on the on your budget changes and impact. Looks like an addition of 7 equipment operators providing lighting, trash, and so forth. These are with the USD annexation. The 300, it's about $300,000, right? So 7 full-time positions. But then if you go down, we're adding 9 folks full-time in the downtown area to do excess trash pickup and glass recycling. So I guess and that's almost for $600,000. So there's a lot more money involved in the second one. I know there's 2 extra positions, but a lot more. Why so much more?
The difference there is, whenever we were talking about the annexation, the money was only for that last quarter of this upcoming budget year. So they're only, the people that we will hire and the things that we will do will only be there for a couple of months in this year, this budget upcoming year. But the 7 people, not the 7 people, the 9 people we're planning on hiring for the full 12 months.
Okay, so the nine for downtown, that's a full year cost, $591,000. For the 7, it's only a quarter of the cost?
Yes.
Okay, so we keep running into this situation where we're spending a certain amount of money in this year, but the cost is going to be much more the next year. It's going to be, so if you take it at $300,000 and that's only a quarter, it's going to be about $1.2 million in the budget the next cycle through. Is that about right?
I would have to go back and look at the numbers to be certain, but the thing that is going to happen is we are also going to have more revenue coming in from the annexation and from the taxes that come in to help cover and defray part of this cost.
And do you think
coming in.
is that money going to come in, that money goes just for this, or it goes to the general fund? And then
It goes to the general fund and then will be routed
So you
back.
may or may not, what we're trying to do is figure out what is how much money are we allocating for next year, the next cycle?
I'll pull that together and
Okay.
get it to you.
Okay. The 551,500 for the annual contract, the contract increase in landfill disposal, is that just a basic contract increase that comes
There-
every year?
There's actually 3 contracts that are affected by that. First one is the disposal, and that's for 66.8. Every year, they raise that contract rate by 2.5%. The other one is the collection cost, and that's related to Waste Industries and Red River. They have a cap of 3% every year, but it is based on the consumer price index for that industry. So that's our best guess of how much that increase is going to be. And then the compost facilities, we have moved away from having our own facility. We've hired a vendor that actually has 2 separate facilities that save us travel time, gas, et cetera. And so their contract was more than what we had put in the plan last year.
Okay. Okay. Couple more questions. The surplus parking, downtown partnership, $870,000, that's an increase. That's coming from a particular fund, and what is the money going to do?
Okay, it has its own special fund,
Mm-hmm.
and so the revenue from the library garage is split between us and the partnership.
Right.
And so every year we go back in, we look at maintenance on the garage, restriping, fixing the elevators, fixing the stairs. The partnership also does the flower basket program. They help with the shuttle buses. We purchase shuttle buses through there and repair those. So a lot of that money is going towards garage maintenance and some items that we know definitely need more repair this year.
Okay. And do you know how much it was last year? Did we put money into this for last year as well?
It varies. Some years the money drops depending on what our repair needs are, and some years it goes up. But I can go back and look at that also for you.
Okay, if you can get that to Ms. Hayes, that would be good. All right, I've been asking people vacancies in positions. You've got about, according to your budget, you got 411 positions this year. You've got more coming. What's your vacancy rate right now?
Right now, I was prepared for this. We
Good.
have 30 vacancies. The oldest one that we have is from January. Within the last 30 days, 9 of those 30 vacancies have come about. So our turnover rate tends to be high because we have a lot of laboring class employees. We have interviewed and done a background check on 14 employees. 13 of those have already agreed to take the job. They will be starting June the 5th. In process, which means we've gotten it approved, we've posted it, we're waiting on a listing. There are 3 jobs that fall into that category, so hopefully those will be filled within the next month. And then we have 4 jobs that we have not started the process on yet. We are in the process of restructuring right now, and those 4 jobs are part of that restructure. So we're looking at what's the best way to use those jobs and what exactly do we want those jobs doing before we post those.
Okay, but you're saying that of the 30 vacancies, the oldest one is January, so you've had 30 vacancies since the beginning of the year?
No, the oldest one, there was one that was from January. Most of them within the last 60 days. And it's
Okay.
just the turnover rate that drives this.
Why, and again, well, you've explained why the turnover rate. Is that typical?
Yeah, it is, but with the new construction and with equipment drivers and the way that the industry is paying more, frankly, than we are, we're finding that a lot of these young kids come in as maintenance and repair workers. They have a requirement to have their CDL license within 6 months, and we help train them, and they take the test, and then they figure out that they can make a lot more money with that CDL someplace else than with us. And so we do have quite a bit of turnover.
Okay. Some of that information probably ought to get to Kathleen Murphy, who's the chair of our personnel committee, because I think she'd be interested in that.
Vice Chair.
And you also give it to the vice chair as well, who I believe is still in the room. Okay, last question. Somewhere along the way, I know that there's always been this argument about the cost of building sidewalks, cost per mile or the cost per foot or whatever it is. And I know at some point somebody came out with a study that said compared to other cities, we're way high, okay? I've never had a chance to go back and take a look at it. But one of the things that I always encourage, at least the folks that work for me to do, is to look at other cities, other states, and compare Have we done that? Is the study that came out, I forget who did it, may have been Walk Bike Nashville. I mean, ours was really, really high compared to other cities.
Well, there was a lot of analysis, and there was comparable info from other cities. I think you always have to remember that we're a metropolitan government, so the area that we cover is always large compared to a lot of other cities. I'll also say, though, that, and this is what I referred to earlier, is that we're striving, to build the best sidewalks that we can, and the range of sidewalks that we build is vast. So if we have to buy right-of-way, if we're in an area that has commercial real estate, if we're in parts of town that have high property values, it affects completely what the cost of what that sidewalk could be.
Well, I guess the response to that is those other cities that we're comparing ourselves to, everything you just said, I think is exactly what they have to do too. So it may be, Nashville's unique,
Except
but.
they might not have as many conditions as we have.
Okay, so I guess the question is, and we can do more of this at some other point, but I want to make sure that we're comparing apples to apples, and that if we're spending a lot more money to build a sidewalk in Nashville as compared to another city, what's driving that cost, and is there a way to deal with it so that we bring down that cost? Because if we bring down that cost, then anybody who's sitting in these seats to my right and behind me will get a lot more sidewalks.
Well, we're interested in that too. I think oftentimes what you see us put in as an estimate is kind of a worst-case scenario, and what we put in is kind of, we take kind of the worst case for utility relocation, and then we also take the worst case for right-of-way acquisition. So the estimate can be really high. It doesn't always pan out that way.
All right, well, and I understand that. I think, again, we want the best-case scenario. We want to drive that price down so that, again, all the people who are sitting in this room and the citizens of the city get a lot more sidewalks, because that's what we want. Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilwoman Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank the Sharons and everyone for being here. I appreciate the team coming out. Mark, y'all do so much, and I have questions on, I think, everything that you do, so I'll try to get through this quickly. Let me start with trash, my favorite thing to talk to Sharon about. I just want to clarify, the excess trash pickup that is funded and is just showing up in this budget changes and impact. It says addition of 4 sanitation workers and 5 equipment operators to provide as-needed service for areas with excess trash and glass recycling for downtown businesses. So the extra trash is not just downtown, is that correct? That may be the other smaller commercial districts that have been begging for help?
That's correct.
Okay.
Both of the Sharons are looking at each other, which
Great.
one's going to answer. That is for the roving trash truck, so that will be countywide.
Countywide. Well, I just wanted to say thank you for that, because that's something that the small commercial districts have been begging for extra pickups, and I think they're willing to buy their own extra trash if y'all can just come by more frequently. So I think that's opportunity for public-private partnership if we can stretch the dollars.
Let me add too that we're also going to use that truck to help MTA with their bus stops.
Awesome.
So
Yeah, that's another one I've been talked about.
if they're ever not busy.
Yeah, which we certainly need along the West End area for sure. Okay, then from that to sidewalks, one thing, an opportunity that's come up in my neighborhood is my neighbors are so excited about getting sidewalks that I think on 2 different streets, we have had a petition with a signature from every single person saying, yes, we want this sidewalk, we'll give up our right-of-way. Is there a process to make sure that when that happens, we then don't go back and pay them for the right-of-way that they said that they would give to Metro? Because it seems like after the sidewalk are built, that's when the process for paying for right-of-way happens, and I've seen it happen on a couple of streets where everybody said they would donate it.
I think that they didn't pay them for the property, but what they paid them for was the temporary easement while the construction was going on.
So you pay them for that as well?
Right.
Okay. That makes sense. And then can you clarify on a street where people aren't so willing to give that up, then do you write 2 checks, or is it a much bigger check, or how does that work?
I think it's a much bigger check, but there's some more people in here familiar. That's my understanding. Don, do you have anything else to add to that? Is he?
Dawn's back here.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yes, Sharon, that is the understanding that it is a higher cost. It's going to cost
Okay.
you more when you get into that.
So as council members, if we can work hard to get everybody on the street to sign that waiver that says we'll give you that can also help make more sidewalks happen, right?
That would be great.
Okay, I've got the template for that petition, so that's good to clarify. And then secondly, I'm just so thrilled that we're now having $30 million a year at least for sidewalks, and then another $3 million for sidewalks to schools. Do we have the capacity in Nashville now to build that many sidewalks? I mean, I know y'all were concerned that we didn't want to do a bunch of up and down. Have we scaled up to where we can build $30 million in a year?
Yeah, and what you mentioned is the key. The worst thing that can happen is if we fund a lot and then we cut it way back, because the key for us is to keep the pipeline moving. It takes a series of steps, and if we can keep projects in that queue, then we can have projects coming out the other end. The worst thing that can happen is when we lose our contractors and when we lose our design firms, and then we have just a gap in the process and nothing gets built. And so
Right.
that's kind of what we're at the point now of having, these new projects start to hit the street. And so we want to keep that kind of conveyor belt going.
It's a steady flow.
And so if we can keep the funding going in some kind of steady manner, then that's really going to allow us to be more productive.
Great, okay, well,
More
I think 30 million seems to be something that's moving us along, which
That's great.
I support wholeheartedly. And then similarly, we just finished the walk and bike plan, and that, if I remember correctly, suggested something on the order of $5 million a year to get us, to move us closer to where we need to be in not too extended a period of time. And I believe this year's budget currently only has $2 million for that. Can you speak to how we get to where we want to be on that one?
You're talking about bikes, right?
Correct, yeah, bikeways, yes.
Well, if you're asking me how we can get more money, is that,
Do we need, I mean, if I read the walk and bike plan correctly, the recommendation from that was 5 million as opposed to 2. How,
I think what they did is kind of took the need and divided it by, how many years it would take us to do it if we funded it at different rates. And so I think that's what you're referring to. I think we can always accomplish more and work faster if we get more funding, but I think we're also recognize that the amount that we've been allocated this year is twice what we had last year.
Right.
So we're seeing an increase.
we'll just keep that pattern
If
going.
we can keep the incline going, then we can build more.
Okay, I certainly appreciate the direction that we're headed anyway. Okay, streetlights. I know that we're expanding into new areas as well as talking about doing a retrofit of existing streetlights or possibly taking over some that currently are owned by utilities. And the mayor's Livable Nashville Committee talked about the possibility of trying to make those dark skies not necessarily certified, but compliant. Where are we in that process?
We're in discussions now with NES about Public Works taking over the streetlights. And if we did, then we would talk about the things you're referring to.
So that's kind of step 2 in the process, I
Yeah,
get.
I
In the new areas, we'll own those outright to start with, or how will those work in the expanded USD?
I think we're still talking with NES and looking at the possibilities of owning those outright versus letting them own them, and other possibilities for what type of lighting and everything else. That's another thing that we're looking at funding and looking at options to decide exactly how we want to roll that out.
Council, we know that some neighborhoods would want night sky and others would want brighter lighting. So, and we haven't really gotten into which neighborhoods would want what, but we know that would be, as you say, the next step.
Gotcha. Just to make people aware of the options of that and the energy savings associated with, not to mention environmental benefits as well. So I'd certainly like to be a proponent of that, as you know. Okay, parking. I've had some great meetings with a number of your staff about parking enforcement, and last year we funded an extra person, and my understanding is that person is now on board in a car, driving around, trying to figure out how long it takes them to get through the circuit. So that information is something we should be getting shortly. Okay, which is be great. I really appreciate that. Is there any possibility that if the funds from parking enforcement came directly to Public Works, would that make that process work better? Or, I mean, it just seems like I'm asking y'all to work really hard to enforce something, and I believe that you know, at least until we get people trained, there'd be a fair amount of income coming in, but it doesn't actually come to y'all directly. So 2 questions: would it make a difference, and what would it take to make that happen?
Right now, we do get the meter money, but we don't get the parking enforcement tickets. But speaking from a metro-wide stance, the money that does come in offsets another department, but in turn, even though we don't get the money, we are supplemented from the general fund through taxes to make up for that, for the rest of our budget needs, because we, as Public Works, don't bring in enough revenue money to cover all of our expenditures. So metro-wide, somebody's benefiting, and I think everybody is trying to move forward and do the best that they can.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So I won't fight that fight, but just say thank you for the increased enforcement. And if y'all can continue to help me out, that would sure be great, because it's a big issue in my neighborhood, and I know a lot of the other little commercial districts. Okay. Finally, there's discussion of creating this Department of Transportation. I'm not sure if department is the correct word. To bring kind of all the functions that now sort of reside both in Public Works and MTA and planning under a single person's supervision or whatever. Will that live in Public Works, or is that reflected in your funding or someone else's funding, or where are we in that process?
Well, where we are is that we have been meeting with MTA and the planning department for several months about that very topic. And we've been talking about how you could structure something like that. Right now, what we've done at Public Works is try to organize our Public Works department towards that goal. And then we've started to hire people with transit background. And we're in discussions right now with Doug at planning about how we might share staff. So I think we're kind of in the formative stages of that, but I think we're already starting to see some of the benefits of it. And I'll also say that I think that the communication and the cooperation between those 3 departments is working really well right now. So I think we're starting to see where we go with it, or whether we ever create a standalone department, I think is for sometime in the future.
Okay, so that doesn't show up as a separate entity in this year's budget, but certainly your hiring is geared toward making that
We're
function.
talking a lot about it, but it's not formalized within the budget.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I appreciate you listening to all my questions.
That's a question I have, because we were sent a press release at 2 o'clock this afternoon of a mayoral event tomorrow that there will be a division of transportation within the Department of Public Works. That's, I know Sharon mentioned a restructuring. That was an interesting way to notify the council. So,
Well, and that's that division.
particularly at budget time.
Right. The division is what we're working on with the reorganization at Public Works.
Well, I look forward to, I guess, officially being notified, I guess, perhaps sometime in the future. Hopefully some kind of letter or other notification to us, and not through a press release that's sent out to the, I know Mark, you didn't send that out, but it's not a great way. So, Councilman Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank everybody for staying late. I was distracted with Councilman Glover earlier. It may have been asked. A couple of quick questions. The Downtown Partnership Special Purpose Fund transfer, that's $870,000 to support operating and maintaining parking garages downtown. Is this a transfer over from the downtown partnership?
No, this is the money that we split with the partnership per the contract.
Oh, okay.
And so it's used for the maintenance in the garage.
And do we get that same amount of money every year?
No, that money will fluctuate depending on what repairs we foresee doing in the next year.
So you do repairs and kind of invoice the partnership?
The money comes, all of that money comes into Public Works, and we split that money in half between the partnership and Public Works. Public Works pays for a lot of the maintenance, such as the elevators and the staircasings and the striping and the lighting in the garage and sump pumps and things like that. And the partnership uses their money for like the shuttle
Right.
buses and the flower baskets.
Well, why is it up $870,000?
Because there are some repairs that are going to be more costly this year that we know that we need to make.
But the money is coming from them or from the general?
It's actually a special revenue fund, so the only thing that's in there is revenues from past years. So there may be some years when we didn't spend all the revenues, and so
Okay.
we have a fund balance.
It's been sitting there as a fund balance.
Correct.
Great, okay, so it's being used. All right, second question is, I know with all the talk about transportation, made traffic plan sort of seem like giving up, but you can't. All the talk about transportation makes traffic planning seem old-fashioned. What are we doing in terms of the intellectual property about helping our traffic flows? Because you have new flows as the city is dramatically changing. Where are our traffic studies? Do we have a countywide traffic study? Do we get the MPO to help fund this? How are we directing our sort of public works budget to improve traffic flow? Again, it's not transportation. We're talking about cars. It's not fashionable, but we have cars and have to make that work better.
Okay, we have two programs that directly affect traffic. One is what we call traffic calming, which is a program we work on in a variety of neighborhoods. And then we also have our intersection program.
Well, I'm not talking about the programs to remediate. I'm talking about the intellectual capital to know what to do. You know, that there's a new traffic pattern on Jefferson. They have much more traffic. What improvements would make that flow work better?
If I understand your question, we work on those things constantly.
Okay, well, how much money do we as a county spend on traffic studies to improve traffic flow?
I don't know the money, but I can go back and look. A lot of that gets done as we notice that there's congestion. We go out, we look at the intersection, we look at the lighting, we try to see the timing, we try to see what times are heaviest. So we take a look at the signalization. Is there something about the intersection that's not working? If we can add a turn lane, does that help traffic flow move better? If we took parking away from one side. And so when we identify those congestion areas, we do go out, we'll have somebody go out and do the counts and take a look at the way the street's already structured to try to improve that.
Let me add, too.
Sure.
It's a mix also,
Okay.
and a lot of those traffic studies are done by private projects that we require, or that they require, and we work with those companies. In fact, you were in a meeting at our place a couple weeks ago, and you kind of got to see some of that
Right.
in action.
Well, if you didn't mind, I think it'd be really useful for the council to know how many traffic studies paid for by developers actually happen in the course of a fiscal year, and how much of the community they cover, and how much of the total county do we then cover in terms of sort of a master plan on traffic flow? Okay.
All right.
That would, I'd be very grateful, because again, unless you get the intellectual content of what to do, it's hard to direct work well. Okay. Thank you all for being here.
Councilwoman Johnson.
Thank you, Chair Rod. I know it's been a long night, so I'm going to keep it short. Thank you, Interim Director Sturdivant, for all of your work. Don Reed, you have been incredible in terms of keeping us as council members on top of the many paving projects and the requests that have come from our constituents. Sharon, you have also been incredibly helpful with the cleanups and with the community meetings that we just held most recently. That was very informational for the community. I have had people to ask for additional meetings since we've had that one, so thank you for your work. Also, thank you for the roving truck in this budget. That is a breath of fresh air to us as council members and money well spent, because when I call about items being dumped on high dumping locations, Public Works, I used to have to call the sheriff's office, and Public Works is just as quick. So I really appreciate that service being provided to us. It is incredibly helpful because we usually have to wait days because the sheriff's office was stretched in terms of getting around to the many areas. So Public Works stepping up and putting that in this budget is very helpful. My question is on the street lights and on the sidewalks. The street lights that you were saying that may be rolled out or put in soon, I don't know if Stewart's Ferry is a TDOT route or is that a Metro route? Do you know? And Rosie can attest, we need street lights on Stewart's Ferry. Okay, well, can you?
We believe that Metro does have responsibility for Stewart's Ferry, and so we'll go.
It is dark along that entire stretch. They just built a huge apartment complex, upscale apartment complex on that road. And so I've had many constituents ask, when is Metro going to put street lights on that stretch?
We'll look into that.
And we can go out and look at that. We do provide safety lighting, especially whenever more traffic is on that area. So we can have somebody go out and take a look at that.
Thank you. The other thing is, one person, one property owner, and this is going back to Council Lady Allen, Berkeley Allen's many questions, because her questions covered many of them that I was going to ask you. But on the sidewalks, when you have all of the property owners that agree to having a sidewalk put in, and you have one that doesn't agree, it kills the entire project. All of the children that were looking to have a safe way to Lakeview Elementary on a sidewalk lost that opportunity because of one person. Help me understand that.
Well, I can't speak for that person, but we have a process that we can employ, that, you know, we can get the property if we have to. But I will say that those situations occur very often, and it's one of the things that slows the process down. But those people have a right to reject our offer, and that's just something we have to work through.
Okay. Well, while you're evaluating what to do with that particular project, I'm going to also speak to Councilman Coleman, who's leaving, because we want to make sure this other project gets done. Since that one can't happen right now, because it was in the works and one person killed it for all the children, can that sidewalk money be moved to the Smith Springs Elementary request? Remember, we didn't have the money in the budget to connect the sidewalk that Metro Schools did for the new elementary school, so that sidewalk could extend all the way to Anderson Road.
Well, I don't know exactly which project you're talking about, but if I could, If you could tell us which one that is, we'd like to look into it tomorrow, see if we can break it loose.
It's the Lakeview Elementary sidewalk, the Willow Branch project, Lakeview Elementary.
I think we can probably, before the meeting's over, we can probably get you the information on that, see if we can help you with that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Last question. The Division of Transportation, where we're adding 2 staff people here at 273,600, and it says the addition of planner 2 and engineer 2 to support new Metro Public Works Division of Transportation. So projects that have been sitting out there for so long, like the widening of Smith Springs Road since 1985, would this particular division be the one that will work with the council member in terms of trying to get that project to where it could actually take shape?
The answer is yes, but we're also going to, in this Division of Transportation, one of the things we're going to be looking at is how we can assist MTA in their effort to provide transit in Nashville. So, but the benefits should be across the board, Public Works.
Well, with that being dead ending into the peninsula, you got the elementary school, you got all of that traffic right there, one way in, one way out. There has got to be some relief given along that little stretch. And the Corps of Engineers has already signed off and said that we can extend Smith Springs Road onto the Corps property. So I just hope that's a project of priority. And like I said, on the sidewalk thing, we want to make sure that the sidewalk extending from Smith Springs Elementary to Anderson Road continues to stay on the forefront since Councilman Coleman had the majority of that project. Thank you.
Councilwoman Henderson.
Thank you, Chair Elrod. Director Sturdivant, I wanted to go back to something that Council Lady Allen was touching on, and my colleague Brett, we had kind of a similar question as it relates to this Division of Transportation. So we see that you've got 2 new FTEs, a planner 2, an engineer, and we're looking at planning's budget, and it looks like planning has 3 people kind of toward that goal of moving in that direction. You'd spoken about, working with Director Sloan and the collaboration there. And first and foremost, I do want to say, just having been engaged with Public Works over the years from a neighborhood perspective, really the way that you all are working with planning is really great. I mean, y'all used to be very siloed, as you know, and so I really want to commend you all for what you're doing in that regard. So can you just elaborate just a little bit further as you move towards this division? I mean, I see that you're kind of trying to move things into alignment, but what do you anticipate that will mean for, I mean, is that solely for our major corridors around transportation-focused projects? Will that have an impact on sidewalk funding, bike lane? How does that kind of play out?
We would like, and again, we're still kind of in those formative discussions, and we actually just had our first meeting about sharing staff in the last couple of weeks. But we like, what we talk about is that the benefits of that would cut across everything that Public Works works on, and I can't really comment on what it would mean to planning, but I think they see it as being something very broad-based too. So it would extend down to things like sidewalks, traffic calming, things like that. I think it's kind of interesting that Public Works has always had engineers and planning has always had planners, but Public Works has never had a planner and planning has never had an engineer. So right. This is the first time that we're talking about trying to cross over those 2 professions and try to have them work together on the same projects. Now, we do that anyway, but we do it from different buildings and the rivers in between, so sometimes communication breaks down. But that's what we're trying to improve. I don't have the exact answers on how that's going to work, but that's kind of the line of the discussions that we're having, and I think it's been productive.
Okay, I appreciate that. I think understanding that it's not maybe just going to be transportation corridor specific, but that it will have positive implications across the whole spectrum of what you do is good to hear. Glad to hear that you're bringing Don Reed's great organizational skills to the sidewalk program in addition to paving. I wanted to ask, I very much appreciate the Friday reports now that we're getting. Those are so very helpful. But I did want to ask, will that supersede the typical kind of spring, fall paving schedule that we get? Will they be incorporated in that Friday report, or will we still see an anticipated paving schedule by council district that we can? I've always appreciated the opportunity, to see like, oh, on this dead-end cul-de-sac, I actually know they're about to build 3 new things, and maybe that shouldn't be in the paving schedule. So I wonder, can you speak from an information sharing standpoint, what that paving program will look like? Has that changed based on the way you're communicating now?
No, ma'am, it will not change. Even better, it should be in our capital fund management system.
Absolutely.
So all of our planned projects for the upcoming year that are funded should be there. And then if you have a question or if something comes up and you want to extend it or change it, then we can sit down and talk about it.
Great, that's good to hear. And several of us, it was a similar situation, wasn't it? It was Public Works was at the end of the day, and we were talking about your wonderful new online tracker.
Yeah.
And
Same group.
ran kind of the same crew.
Yeah.
And could you remind us when that will go live so that I know we can sort by that field of district and then we can thus see the projects?
We're hoping for, you want to answer it? We're hoping for right after July 4th. And there's probably going to be a couple little bugs in it, but at some point you just kind of have to start doing it. So we're going to make it right after July 4th.
Okay. And so for those constituents that are breathing down my neck about what's going to be done for spring paving, we're going to need to wait till July to kind of hear what that's going to, from the new process standpoint.
Yes. And if you want to know, just send me an email. If you would like to know, send me an email, and I can send you the spring paving for your district.
Okay, I appreciate
People are
that.
asking, and we do that. I've sent, Council Lady Van Reese has emailed me and said, Don, what's in my district? And so we'll send it to her. We have
Okay.
a list, and then she gets to question or talk
I
about it.
appreciate that because it is somewhat of a transitional year. I mean,
Yes.
maybe, next year we'll all just go and sort by district and it'll all be there and that'll be great.
And we know you would like to know, so we'll send it to you. That's not a problem.
I appreciate that. Then from a staffing perspective, something that came up in the walk and bike strategic plan from an alignment perspective of the paving schedule and the bikeways schedule, and that, we commended bike ped planner Jason Radinger, but we also recognized with 532 square miles and all that we're trying to achieve, that there's a lot to kind of coordinate there. And so I wonder from a staffing perspective and, just as you look to manage both the sidewalk and the paving plan, and the paving plan includes the bikeways, how are we being strategic about that? And also from a funding perspective, how are we making the decision? I know Council Lady Allen spoke to, if you funded it $5 million over this many years, then you could do kind of your core network at the heart of the city, and I do support that, but strategically, right, if we're otherwise paving or doing in an area where we think there's a need, but I kind of feel like from a funding perspective, we need to do more around bike lanes to have protected bike lanes, because there's so many places, with all due respect, hold the space, stripe it down, but that they don't get used, and then that's almost kind of counterproductive to what we're trying to achieve, because then the community tells us, well, there's nobody in that bike lane. Well, of course there's nobody in the bike lane, because the speed limit's 40 miles an hour and there's only a stripe of paint and nobody's going to use it. So I just wonder if you can speak to that from a staffing standpoint to track that bike lane piece and how we're doing that.
Well, I'll try the staffing part of it. Don, you might try the rest of it. But part of that discussion we're having with planning is a bike position. So we would have, and if we can do that, then Jason would get some assistance. And so we're talking about that.
Excellent. I'm glad to hear that. And yes, sir, did you want to?
And from a funding standpoint, Jason and I work real close together. As a matter of fact, I hold up paving projects to put in bike lanes. And the good thing about it is, from a paving standpoint, we're going to have to stripe the road anyway. So we assume a lot of that cost, because instead of putting the edge line at the edge of the road, we move it in 4 feet to give you a bike lane. So the paving program does help offset a lot of the striping that Jason has to pay for. Now, he'll put in the ballards and all the other stuff. He'll get the design make, but we work real good together. So he only got $2 million, but we'll help make it. We'll help stretch it. It works together.
So then can I ask just strategically, if you know, say in a typical paving project, you would have had that sort of coordination where you would have striped it down,
Right.
or you would have done a buffer, but it was a painted buffer. You know, if you have available right of way, you know it's not necessarily on the strategic plan for sidewalks. What are we doing kind of proactively and intentionally to get in more buffered bike infrastructure that people are really going to use?
Well, what we do is, when we put together our paving plan, we send it to Jason. And Jason has a survey made, so he will know the geometrics of most of the roadways. So he can tell us, Don, we can put a buffer here, we can put a protected here, we can only get a 5 foot here. So we already worked through that process. So that's what we do on the front end, and then we'll figure out the funding on the back end. But he'll get the paving schedule, and he'll go through it road by road, and he'll send me a list and say, these are the locations that I want a shared bike lane. This is where I can get a protected bike lane. This is where I think we can only get a standard 4 foot bike lane. So we're doing that daily.
Great, I appreciate that we're not just going with kind of the baseline assumption of just striping it down, because I think from a leadership perspective, and what we're hearing from our constituents is they do want to get out and bike, but it's, you know, it's that, I guess the Walk and Bike Strategic Plan said, you know, interested but afraid, you know, and count pretty much everybody in that category, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and one of our priorities, and I know you've read it, Walk and Bike, a million times, but is to create those stress bikeways. So as we're looking ahead at projects that we're going to be planning, creating more buffered bike lanes, more protected bike lanes will be the priority, rather than just striping, because we know that we have more demand and we have, you know, more people using lanes that are protected. So that $2 million that gets spent in the future and in subsequent years there will be an emphasis on making sure that we're building out that low stress priority bikeway network.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Councilman Pridemore.
Hey. This was quick, short. I wish Zach hadn't left, Terry, because I wanted him to hear this. Last year, I had a dream of wanting to have a roving Public Works weed eater truck just for the connector streets. And then when I saw this roving trash truck, I said, man, we're halfway there. But I don't know what the cost would be. Is it just a seasonal? What I'm talking about is not, you know, every street corner, but just the connector streets where the guardrails are. You know, the neighbors, the people who live on the corner sometimes won't cut it because it's the guardrail, or other times it's just there's no housing there because of if it's a major connector. And, you know, I don't want to call in and say, hey, could you just go down and cut this corner and this corner? So I just thought maybe if we could have a roving seasonal crew, or either that or throw another guy in there with this truck and these trucks and with a weed eater. But they sometimes don't go where we need them to go. But
We don't do dreams.
You don't do dreams. I understand that. That's why I didn't mention it last year.
When you first mentioned it, I thought they were like weed eaters shooting at the side of the truck, like going along the road.
I had a better opportunity maybe getting it last year, but
we'll look at that.
just whatever the cost of. We're just talking about a crew of two people in a truck. You know, 2 men in a truck with a weed eater, but or woman. I'm sorry. Just if the cost is something that we might be able to afford, then yes. But just if there's some way you can break it down. I'm not talking about 5 trucks. I mean, I'd love to have 5 trucks, but I'm reasonable. Thank you.
that just leaves, I guess, me in the queue. First of all, I want to thank y'all, and I worked with Benny Word on getting some new, and I appreciate y'all, Public Works and Benny, getting some new traffic trailers to do the speed monitoring. We're going to be getting, how many new of those are we getting? 4 new ones, 2 new ones? So have 4 new ones eventually. So I want to appreciate Benny and Sharon working on that. And I do, Mark mentioned at the beginning about the increased emphasis on communication with the community and the council. I do want to say, I have noticed that before you mentioned it, that y'all have made a concerted effort. That was something that was, I think, was needed. So I appreciate that emphasis on that. And I know I sent y'all some detailed questions yesterday on right-of-way permitting and closures and that kind of thing. And I didn't expect y'all to have those answers today because I asked some detailed questions on those. But it goes back to, as y'all heard at the during the water services budget, is that we've got, I think, an issue, and I think it's partly across all of metro government, is just trying to keep up with our boom as a city. And we're not booming in efficiency as a city government. And that is not on any individual person or administration. I think that's just something that we're all trying to keep up with. But as a council and as chair of Public Works, that's something that I think with right-of-ways in particular, the illustration that I had earlier of, and this is not anything on Don or Metro Water, is just there's a lack of, I think, just, the silos are being broken down, but they're still there. There's still some foundation there. There's still something going on there where more of it needs to be broken down. And I think I'm hoping that a lot of that can be fixed through IT, processes or something like that, where departments talk to each other, so we don't have instances like that. And also, just the general right-of-way closure system, having an increase of that, where I know, for instance, Rory works a heck of a lot of hours, is that these are ways, and some of the questions I ask is, these are ways that I think we could fund them through fee increases, to where it's not borne on the general taxpayer, where, folks that are living out in Southeast Nashville aren't paying for more folks to try to manage right-of-way closures in the downtown, but those fee increases could pay for more, for a better IT system, for more folks to work those hours. So, Rory's not putting in 70 hours a week or something like that. I know, can you give us, I guess, a quick status update of where y'all are on some of the, talking with the contractors' codes on right-of-way closure, I guess, processes or fees, or what's going to be coming out of that? Do you have any kind of update on that at all?
Want to try the fees thing?
On the fees, and I took a look at your questions today, and I started trying to put together some answers. It's kind of like what Councilmember Allen said about the fees there. It's more of a government-wide. So we do collect fees for temporary street closures and for excavations, but it's not enough to cover everything that happens inside Public Works. So we collect other fees too. None of the fees and none of the revenue that Public Works brings in would fully fund what we need for our budget. And so we are supplemented through the general fund and through the sales tax and the property taxes. So increasing those fees does not directly apply to just the people that are working in the permits area. It helps cover the entire cost for Public Works. So we are looking at that. We are restructuring the way that we're handling our permits right now. And then once the restructure has taken place and we've kind of looked at how things are flowing, we'll decide what else needs to be done, and we'll make some further recommendations if we need to do that.
Mark.
And I'd like to comment a little on the coordination aspect that you were referring to. And I'll agree with Scott Potter. I think the government people coordinate as much as we can. It's in no one's interest for us not to. We want to be as efficient as we can. What's really hard for us to know and to control is what the private market does. And if you think about it, there's literally thousands of projects going on in Davidson County right now, and we don't know their schedules or what their sequence will be. And so very often we get into that awkward situation where we do work and then a couple weeks later they come along and do work after us, which might tear up what we worked on. If we tried to wait for everyone, we wouldn't get anything accomplished. So at some point, we just have to do our work and then just know as much as we can about what private developers are working on. But it's a really tough challenge.
And believe me, I don't know whether it sounds like it or not. I'm trying to be reasonable that y'all do have an extremely tough job, that y'all have encompassed a lot of different functions for Metro government. But in the case of a developer, if they're touching Metro government in several different departments, you can see when, hey, they're going to be making a curb cut or a cut, on the road that they're going to be putting in, not hold off on the paving, but tell them, hey, go ahead and do your cut for your water, your sewer tap. Hey, do that a few weeks earlier. That way, you're not cutting into our new pavement. And I know last year when Councilman Pridemore was the budget chair, he sponsored the fee increase last year to help increase the fees to get them to where they are now. But I don't know if it needs council legislation or something. But I would prefer, and I'm not speaking for any other council member, but right-of-way permitting to be covered, as much for dollar from the fees, because those are borne on the folks that are directly impacted. And we don't have an impact fee necessarily here in Davidson County, but that could somewhat function as an impact fee to where, if you're doing the curb cutting, if you're doing the developing, you can bore those costs. And I don't think we're doing that enough. And that means that roads are getting torn up, things are getting that are staying closed that should be open, or that kind of thing. And I don't think we're doing enough. And again, that's not any individual person. That's just, I think, something we're trying to grapple with as Metro government. So that is, it was extremely frustrating yesterday about that, and it's just something that's been building. And I know y'all have been talking with some groups about changing your processes, and you're still working on restructuring and that kind of thing. But our growth isn't waiting for it, so we have to move faster on it. And as I said to Metro Water, we have, I believe, the political will in this council to raise fees to cover those kind of things. We in many instances doubled our stormwater cost fees for many folks across Nashville. I think there's political will here to increase fees to help get a system in place, whether it's more employees, more revenue, or whatever it might be, to help a better, functioning IT system. And that, because I went on the website today, and it's a Word document or PDF document that was last updated in 2017 or 2007, 10 years ago. And when on St. Louis's website, somebody mentioned that St. Louis had and you can pull it up and you can click on it and you can just get it, apply for it on the website. You don't have to print it off, scan it, and send it back in. So I know that's probably something y'all are looking at.
Actually, it's something we're already working on.
Yep.
It should be rolled out.
So Councilwoman Johnson's got, I just want to, with all that said, y'all do a great job. I know it may not seem like it, but this is something, an area that I think can be improved. I know this week is Public Works, National Public Works Week. Y'all do a great job, your communication staff, Don, Sharon, Benny, everybody else. I want to from as Public Works Chair, I appreciate everything that y'all are doing. And Mark, I know y'all got a tough job and improving Public Works, and it may not sound like it, but I personally do appreciate it. Thank you. Councilwoman Johnson.
Okay. I just wanted to end tonight because nobody acknowledged Ali Afis, and all of us as council members just want to thank you for allowing Ali, giving us the opportunity to have Ali Afis at many of our community meetings. He works incredibly hard, and I just wanted to give him a shout out of thanks and for you giving him the opportunity to work for us.
Well, thanks for saying that. He's a great employee, and I tell people I worked on the football stadium with Ali, and he was old then. But let me say, since you brought that up, that we've got a lot of really good employees at Public Works, and the compliments that you're giving us is a compliment to like 400 people that work really, really hard. I know you appreciate that, but I just want to point that out.
And please, not everything in Metro government gets done as fast as we would want, but we do appreciate all the hard work, particularly in Public Works. Y'all do a lot of hard work and a lot of times dangerous work, so we appreciate it very much. Nobody else in the queue. We're adjourned.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.